Before the intro music begins, I'd like to express my gratitude to all the listeners who have subscribed and listened to Startup Anthology podcast. The aim of Startup Anthology is to celebrate and share the stories and experiences of startup employees, and is not meant to reflect any opinion or comment about any particular company. Our goal is to create a community centered around the unique working culture of startups. This week, I have a conversation with James Huizar. James, an accomplished visual artist, recently participated in Flatstock 92 at South by Southwest this year. Listen as we discuss his background in studio art from the University of Texas at Austin, his professional growth through various roles, including stints at the Mexicarte Museum here in Austin and the Douseum in San Antonio, Texas, and his pivot to working at startups. We talk about the differences between workplace cultures, exploring his personal challenges and learning experiences, examine the evolution of his art, and discuss how he successfully balances his passion projects with other professional obligations.
Oh, yes. This is great. Moss better. Man, This city has changed so much.
There's Google. I think that's Google.
I don't remember this bridge. I used to work off of 5th and Congress.
Did you really?
Yeah, man. And it's interesting because I would always, every time I moved away from Austin, I would always be like, man, I want to do South by something. It's a lot of energy when it comes to South by Southwest. It's going to be fun to be a part of Flatstock 92 next week.
How many shows have you done?
I went to New York for 5 Points, Print Expo, Paper Trail in San Antonio, and then Designer Con. So 5? Well, from 5, and then this year it'll be 7. So now we're just talking.
Yeah, I really enjoyed just the conversational thing.
Okay. I mean, ever since listening to all the episodes, it gave me, we're doing this a second time. And I think it gave me some thought of like what I didn't cover or like how I want to talk about myself.
But you took a chance and did it really early on.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start like my normal thing where I talk about where I'm from, my name and all that jazz.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name's James Huizar. I grew up 30 miles south of San Antonio in a small town called Pleasanton, Texas. It claims it's the birthplace of the cowboy. So I grew up south of San Antonio in a farming community, and I didn't want to wear Wranglers or cowboy boots or tuck in my shirt. I wanted to wear sweatpants and Ninja Turtle shirts. Once I saw that 1994 live action movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I just wanted to draw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the rest of my life. I still want to eat pizza, and I still, want to learn how to do nunchucks. Yeah.
I want to be a nunchucker.
Yeah, exactly. For some odd reason, like I just resonated to wanting to draw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ever since that movie and the cartoon and that came out in the 80s. And my mom actually kept a lot of my drawings from when I was young and gave me a scrapbook for one of my birthday gifts when I turned 30. My mom was like, here you go. Here's all your report cards and your drawings in a little book. But ever since then, like I just always called myself an artist, and I graduated from high school in 2003.
Where did you go to college?
I went to University of Texas at Austin and studied studio art. Well, Bachelor of Fine Arts in Studio Art. Once I graduated from University of Texas at Austin with a studio art degree, and my focus, I wanted it to be printmaking. And so I went to lithography, and I also was in painting. And I was so uninterested in painting that the day I cleaned up my studio, my brushes were gone. And I took it as a sign that like, oh yeah, I shouldn't paint. And so I went full on printmaking. So I would go to Slugfest, and I tried, I was trying to find a job and just being typical Austin in 2009, just going out, trying to make art with all your buddies and also like keep a day job. But Austin was a lot cheaper back then. So it was
a little bit easier.
Yeah, it was way easier. I found access to the equipment, and then it takes time because if you rush through it, you can mess it up. Like you draw it fine on a stone, you go to etch it, you end up just messing the whole thing up, and then you make an impression and it doesn't come out like you drew it. But it's okay to fail, but if you keep on failing, you get kind of frustrated.
If you don't learn from your failure and you're just like, you're wanting it to be perfect, but then if you don't know why you've been messing it up, that's frustrating.
Right. There's no professor to tell you. So, okay. So then I transitioned to screen printing, and I didn't know I would always make fun of screen printers. But about that time that I had graduated, I went to Santa Fe and for 6 months was internship at Landfall Press, and they publish fine art prints for contemporary artists. And at that time I was young and dumb and just wanted to smoke cigarettes and drink beer and hang out with ladies and be cool in Austin. And I didn't know what I had, but that internship ended and they were like, you should apply to Tamarind, which is a master printer program. And I would have learned lithography and etching, but printing for other artists. So I'm back in Austin, living on the east side with my best friend. We were paying like $300 a piece to live in like this really rundown shack, but it was great. And I started drawing again more. I had more time. I ended up landing at my first museum, Mexicarte Museum, which is just a few blocks away from where we're located, where we're recording. It's off of 5th and Congress, still there. It's going to turn 40 this year because I turned 40. And that's how I know it, that it's going to be the same age as I am, from the executive director and founder, Silvia Orozco. She told me that it started in 84 and I was born in 84, that it's the same age as I am. But the institution has been around for 40 years and I was a production manager there. And talk about learning a lot from a place. Like that's where I got to cut my teeth and learned about nonprofits and fabrication. I was at Mexicarte Museum as their production manager, and I was there for about 6 years and did a bunch of exhibits, probably about like 3 to 4 a year, and got to know, at that time, there was a curator that got hired on, and their name is Claudia Zapata. And then there was a graphic designer, and their name was Claudia Aparicio Gamundi. Both of them very creative. And we were at Mexicarte Museum together, creating these exhibits, putting them on. Of course, Sylvia's still there guiding us. And, it's her idea before, we executed it. We wanted to do our own thing. So we got together and we started making a zine.
A zine?
A zine, yeah. It's a self-produced magazine.
Okay.
Usually Xeroxed, black and white. In the 80s, people started creating fan art zines for punk bands. And Austin's libraries have zine collections. Our zine was called Chingo Zine. And it focused on Latin American, Latinx artists regionally, but also from the United States. We got about 7 to 8 issues. And we would send it to Russia. It's collected by the MoMA library. And we get orders still to this day.
Is that LLC you were talking about making?
Yeah, that was the LLC that we formed. Claudia Zapata, Claudia Aparicio Gamundi, and myself. And we just continued to make work until we kind of all split around 2012, 2014, when I moved to San Antonio. And I worked at a interactive museum, children's museum and interactive science center in downtown San Antonio called the Douseum. Children learn by doing. So they rebranded. It used to be the San Antonio Children's Museum, and they rebranded to the Douseum. And I was hired as their first exhibit technician. And so I went from art history museums to interactive museums, where art museums, history museums, you don't touch anything. And then this children's museum, science center, is directly aimed at children 0 to 10, and they get to touch everything. And so I learned a lot, and I got to shed a lot of bad habits there. It's a nonprofit, and it kind of already had a structure. It had all these departments defined. But where I would say it's very similar to a startup is I got to go in and I got to create the manual for all of these 350 exhibits and maintain them and implement a CMMS where we had maintenance on a cycle. We would do weekly, monthly, annual maintenance, repair and maintenance. We set up the shop, and it had a 4x8 CNC router. We had a laser cutter and 3D printing. So what
would y'all make? Or just the
exhibits? We would make repairs to the exhibits. So I was there for about 5 to 6 years, and I met my wife there. We got married there at the Douseum. She worked there for about 6 months, and then she became a full-time teacher. but I didn't start dating her while we were at the museum. And then, so nonprofits, if anyone has experience with nonprofits, they don't pay very well, but you have to do a lot. You become a generalist. You do logistics.
You do design work if you're doing your own CNC and fabrication, and then the admin side.
And then I wanted the opportunity to learn all of these new technologies that were emerging or new to the public space that, I remember when 3D printers came out and I saw them at a South by Southwest in 2009. And they were like, it's $1,000 or $1,500 for a PLA FDM printer. And then I bought my first printer for $150.
Yeah, I think I spent 200 and something, maybe 300.
And now CNC routers are even more affordable. Laser cutters are going to start becoming more affordable.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I think I got to grow like my passion for learning, and also failing. I mean, I'm always down to try something as long as I know that I'm going to learn and it's going to help my visual art process. I make toys, resin casted toys with the collective called Puro Chingon Collective. That was our name, the ones that published and created the Chingo zine. We would do toys, resin casted toys. It's a whole fun thing, whole niche thing that started in the 90s. For people that know what, so the commercialization of that example is like Funko. Everyone knows what Funko toys are, right? They're soft vinyl toys.
Right.
There's a whole other culture like Super 7 that license movies and they make their own toys. It could be an action figure. It could be their own character that they make. But if you literally look up designer art toys, you've never seen anything like this. Like it's its own art movement. And I'm really passionate about this. So I'm going to say my piece about toys. So some people might have heard of Kaws, Kaws. He was a graffiti artist, screen printer. He would take subway bus stop posters and paint on them. And then he eventually graduated to making toys, and they've gone as large as now they're sculptures, 25 feet sculptures.
Really?
And he exhibits all around the world, Japan. I think he's based in New York, but there's a lot of artists that are now like riding the line of 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional. And, they'll start off as a painter and then their paintings will graduate to toys or vice versa. So yeah, at the Douseum, got my, started redoing the toys I wanted to make. But I wasn't hand modeling them. I was 3D modeling them.
Okay.
And then printing them and then eventually molding and resin casting them while also still doing screen printing. And that's also, I'm going to go back to Mexicarte. Mexicarte wasn't just started by Silvia Orozco. It was started by 3 people. One that's very, very important to the screen printing community here in Austin. His name was Sam Coronado, passed away in 2014. He had a printmaking residency called Serie Print, and he would invite 12 to 14 artists a year to come and make a screen print in a studio, and you would split the edition. So I got to do one of those.
Okay.
I was in the 2012 portfolio, and that was a 12-color screen print I did with the studio. So I've always been making, all at this point, just always wanting to participate somehow with the collective, drawing, printing, toy making, and beer drinking.
You got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah, it makes it a lot funner when you're inebriated printing. And so once the Douseum, I was kind of, going to move on. Because again, nonprofits don't pay that great unless you're, in a leadership role. And I was a exhibits technical manager when I had left. And then I went to a startup. And that's where I met you, Jeremy. I went from a nonprofit to a startup. So everything was different for me. I think it was definitely eye-opening. And it was definitely, I'll be honest, I was like scared. Like, did I make the right choice? Coming out of it, it was the right choice. It got me to a different level and it got me out of my comfort zone.
Right.
And I don't think I've ever used the word advocating, that word, more than I ever have since being at the startup. Priority, advocating, those are just some of the things. There's a lot I could take away that I learned what not to do from all of my experience, but I did learn a lot about how to speak in front of people, even though you're uncomfortable. But you have to say it. Even if you do, you have to say
Be
it.
comfortable to
be uncomfortable.
be uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know that at the time, even at the startup. I didn't know that about myself.
I want to share some exciting news. Startup Anthology now has merch. Check out the merch section of our website. There's a link to our store at the top of the page. Follow Startup Anthology on Spotify and Apple Podcast and be notified of new episodes. If you're enjoying Startup Anthology, make sure to comment, like, and share with your friends. To view James's portfolio, visit his website at jameshuizar.com and follow him on Instagram at James Huizar. Now let's get back to the conversation with James.
I did get to meet a lot of great people. And
What was your motivation for joining?
my motivation, it was definitely monetarily the increase. And also I was interested in the whole process of what y'all were doing, right? Like how it relates to my experience in automation, but not on the programming PLC side. But what motivated me was that my friend, our mutual friend who referred me, was like, this is cool stuff. I really like it. They give me Topo Chicos every day. I like Topo Chico. And I had created systems and standardizing at the Douseum. So I was like, oh, well, if they need process, SOPs, manuals, guides, I've all done that. I've done training.
So you came in as a project manager.
Yeah. Testing project manager, which looking back on it, like I finally understand what that role should have been doing.
Writing the book and trying to figure that out on the fly.
And it's no fault of the startup. It was just, I didn't realize that like it was always going to be changing every 3 months. Every day was something different, a new priority. Every 3 months, it was going to be a reshuffling. The perks were cool. I mean, literally like after I got hired, we got like this crazy, I had gotten one bonus in my life. And then the startup's bonus for that Christmas was, and I had only been there a month. And my wife looks at me after the Christmas party. We got the bonus and she was like, you can't leave this place. And of course, like any job, there's going to be good and bad. Mm-hmm. And I think having that perspective and then also being able to reflect on my experience there has got me to understand where I may not have an answer, but can I get an answer? Can I ask other people? Can I ask people I've worked with? Can I ask Jeremy? Hey, do you know how to do this? Hey, do you know someone that could tell me how to do this? And I wasn't very good at asking questions there because I did feel a lot of imposter syndrome.
Crazy. Because I felt that a lot of times too.
But I'm also a visual artist. And like, I also experience that imposter syndrome as well. So, it's kind of like, even at the job I'm at now, like I have to, definitely build myself up to be like, you know what? An answer is better than no answer.
Yeah, no answer is an answer.
You're right. So is that similar to I don't know?
No, that's an answer too. When you say I don't know, then it's followed up with, I'll get back to you though. Like that's how I've always combated imposter syndrome because like I don't know a lot of things, but I know how to look them up and I'll look them up and figure out how to do it and then come back to you and say, oh no, it's this or this.
Well, I think that attitude definitely bodes well for navigating a startup. But this was my first startup. And so like I had come from being able to, create standards, standardize procedures, manuals.
And what's your title now where you're at?
My title now is Technical Operations Manager.
You've managed a lot of things.
Yeah. People, creating new things and process, procedures, training, guides, manuals. And I think like being able to reflect on my experience at the startup has got me to be more confident in like, you know what? You can do this. You've done it. Why was it any different at the startup? Because everything was changing. It was always rapidly changing. So it was hard to have a process.
I mean, that's the opposite of what you were doing, right? The Douseum was probably pretty static. Like every once in a while you'd have a new exhibit change, but not much change outside of that, like the same.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a whole different arena now.
Absolutely. Yeah. How do you feel about listening to yourself?
I've been very self-conscious at the beginning. It's difficult to listen because you have like your perception of what you hear. what you sound like, right? Like your skull and everything conducts the sound to your ear differently than what it sounds like to you. Yeah.
I would say it's like a similar feeling when you present to a group of people. And that's also something I've had to really, really gain skill in at this new company. It's like I have to present every month and like have visuals, where like at the startup, it was more like you're kind of in charge of this, but the engineers will kind of take care of that, or they'll make a decision so quickly that you don't really need a presentation.
That was one of the lessons learned from that for me was take the time to put it together and make notes out of it instead of doing it on the fly, because there's a lot of things that get lost in translation from the time you sat down and talked about it to, I don't know, 3 hours later when someone else is reflecting on what's going to happen. You understand one thing, but we don't have anything written down. They understand it slightly different, and then come back together. And that's part of the frustration.
I was thinking more that everybody processes information differently.
That's you. Yeah.
So if you're talking to a higher up,
they need the bullet points.
Yes.
They don't need
not even bullet points.
They need the answer and how much it costs. And then they make the decision. Whereas being lower down, it was, we need to figure out how to do it. Like write the plan, make the map for everyone else to do it, as long as we stayed within their boundaries of vision and cost. That's something I learned.
Yeah. But I mean, I wasn't there for like...
You were at the company for 13 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
November to January 23. Yes.
Okay.
But also, I think me reflecting on since leaving, what I'm trying to say is that I think from my perspective, it was hard to make an impact because everything was always changing. And I get it. I guess I should have done more research about startups. And since then, I have done research on the structure of startups, and that's a common thing. They're always going to be changing.
Yeah.
Pivot. And that was one thing I didn't understand was all the lingo, pivot, blockers. But also you got exposure to a lot of these different ways to track progress and tasks.
What a lot of it is the nature of the work, right? So as you grow in a startup, you have a lot of things changing. You're getting fast money in from equity and investors. They want to see progress being made in whatever the progress needs to be. Then you take that money, you're hiring new people have come in with new ideas and methodologies. You might have started going in one direction and then all of a sudden, oh, that necessarily wasn't the right direction to go. And we got to switch to this. It's the nature of it. It's fluid, right? You start with 25 people. They're all really, really close. And then funding happens. And then all of a sudden you go, whoop, start going vertical. And then you fall into these different roles. And
well, that was your experience.
That was my experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just like, you got the little snapshot of it as the pivot happened. Then where the inflection point in the company is where you came in.
Totally. Yeah. Cause when I interviewed, I thought you were going to be my manager.
And it changed.
So it was kind of a interesting who to report to, but also like I worked with you every day, but I didn't report to you. I reported to our boss, and it was kind of a culture shock, like how young. Oh, I didn't really care to know anyone's age. I mean, it didn't really matter.
We're on the older end of the spectrum, old guys.
It's interesting. Where did it go? Where did all the time go?
So the motivation for joining was the financial gain and mm-hmm. seeing the new technology and being a part of something that's cutting edge of an industry that's being disrupted. Now that you've left, but what's been the biggest difference that you've noticed between the startup culture versus the traditional corporate culture?
Well, I think there's similarities, but definitely the workforce age, how young startups tend to hire is a difference. Where I'm at currently, people being there 5 to 12 years
or
plus,
longer.
Yeah, is a difference, right? Where people come and go. And I'm not saying there's not turnover. I mean, I think there's turnover. People are looking for better paying jobs. I think there's just a lot of options. I took what I saw from the startup and I leveraged those newly gained skills to land at a job that, this company has been around for 40 plus years and they have a track record and the startup has a track record, but it's a lot shorter.
What's a risk? You have the unknown. I guess the risk of the unknown. Is it going to work? Will people like it? What will happen in the economy, weather, I don't know, the world that will keep this from happening? You have to fight all those odds at a startup. You don't necessarily have to do that at a established company that has revenue and money in the bank.
Right. I think also what I would say is similar is planning as best as you can. planning mitigates risk and scheduling helps with mitigating that risk, and always following up on the plan and the schedule, knowing that that it's going to change.
What was the culture like? The culture between you and coworkers and you and the people you dealt with every day?
The people was great.
Yeah.
I think everybody had very positive, optimistic attitudes. And it was weird because I wasn't a veteran. There was a lot of things I didn't know. But the people were great. I don't know if we necessarily knew the right questions to ask, but personality wise, everybody, you could tell there was definitely not a divide, but there was really young people that just fresh out of college or they had a job prior. One of the cultural differences I noticed was that you dealing with younger people, they didn't know all the bands. I remember a mutual coworker of ours was talking about Skrillex, and then he brought up someone else, maybe David Bowie. And I was like, they're not going to know that. They're too young to know that. And they did not know that. And so actually it's a dream of mine to create a playlist. I think it should be a standard for new hires to get a playlist that is curated by everybody that's there to get to know them.
To understand somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
What type of music they listen to. You
totally
kind of get a glimpse of what they...
Yes.
Their personality.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Bring a dish. Could you imagine start a pop to get to know people?
Bring your favorite dish.
It's a little bit harder. You just got to choose a song.
Yeah, bring a song and a dish. Tell us why you chose this.
Yeah, yeah. I remember having a conversation with a younger engineer. He was into Billy Strings and folk music, but that's what I would call it. My bad if that's incorrect. But I remember bringing up Prodigy, The Fat of the Land, and I played a track for them, and they're like, "Oh man, what is that?" And I was like, "I've never heard this." Yeah, but that's how I would describe my experience there. I think that's what I like about my career, is that I've always been able to get to relate to people, talk to people. That's also something I learned from the startup, was get to know them. People want to talk about themselves, and you're getting to know people.
What would you tell yourself now if you started over? What would you do differently?
What I would do differently?
For the lessons learned?
Don't be scared to talk to people. That's what I would tell myself. They're also trying to figure it out. And I don't think I realized that until after. I was everyone's trying to figure it out. I think establishing a team mindset is so important. And I don't think it's simple to do that.
Just team mindset on...
we're in this together, but you have your portion to run. I have my portion to run. We're working towards an end result. I think people want to belong to a team. I would also tell myself, try new things, or you'll never know until you try it, right?
Right.
Taking a risk. Startup was a risk. Going to New York, 5 Points Festival was a risk. Going to Designer Con was a risk. You're already vulnerable, expressing yourself, your artwork. Some people might like it. Some people might not understand it. But that's just something that the startup really showed me. That's what going to a startup made me be oh yeah, well, I tried that. So
it pushed your boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of what you can,
and that's a positive.
Yeah.
And you're right. Yeah. I did learn. You can change. If you want to try something, learn about it, do it. Maybe it's not for you, but you're learning. Get out of your comfort zone if you can. If you haven't gotten hired at a startup, I think it's an experience that we should all, it's not for everybody. I could say it's probably not for me, and that's okay.
Well, you wouldn't have known it. Yeah. What about now? What's one of the hard things you have right now?
I think we were fluid and we could change at the startup. You had to. That was a part of the startup.
It was
you were going to change.
Yeah.
And so a proven company, it's a little bit harder for them to change and adapt. And so I think that is a major difference. Also, what I would say, since the reduction in force, it really gave me the opportunity, got a severance, which was cool, bought me some time. But that's when I really wanted to scale the amount of showing my artwork, vending. And that's where I went to 5 Points Festival in New York, showed my artwork there, went to Designer Con in Anaheim. And this job has allowed me that I'm a visual artist and I'm going to pursue that passion, but I'm not going to let it hurt the amount of work I do for the company. But it's still something that I'm going to commit myself to. There's a lot of people that are just really busy at the startup.
What do you mean by busy?
Busy, like previous episodes, they talk about how passionate they are about certain things. And so that passion makes them busy. I'm really busy. You're really busy. We all need a day job. And then we have a passion that we go home to.
Right.
And want to grow.
Yeah. It's not like busy for just filling time.
Yeah. You have to do it.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to make artwork.
Yeah.
I have to be drawing. I have to be screen printing. I have to be creating or learning how to create new process. I mean, you learned all this. You're a podcaster.
This is fun. I like sitting around hearing people's stories and stuff like that. That's just like really cool.
It's kind of like we're bonding through these episodes. You know, I don't know. It's very interesting. Now I feel like I know some of the people that I never really talked to.
Well, that's the never told stories or the unheard stories of startup life. So everyone heard the CEO and the founders. They'll tell those all day long because they're very outgoing. They're very charismatic. They're very out there. And granted, they're the ones that have the vision and the mission and the idea and start building the team out. But the people that come around, they can't do it by themselves, right? They can't start a company on their own. They can't take it to the next level on their own. They have to hire. They have to have people. They have to have a team. And so it's those other people that come in, right? Cool, man. I appreciate doing this again.
I hope it was fruitful. I think the thing that is going to trip me out is hearing myself.
I've told everybody up to this point, you're going to hear yourself for the first time and it's going to sound different.
I always think I have like a deeper voice than maybe there's something wrong with my ears.
I think it's a real deep baritone.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start speaking like this.
Cool, man. Thanks for meeting me at the library.
Yeah.
This is actually, I haven't been here before.
Neither have I. It's my first time.
Yeah, we're sitting on the reading patio.
I wish you could drink out here. Be nice.
I mean, I feel like you have a nice beer out here. Can you imagine what it's like here in the summer, though?
It's really hot.
They have fans.
Texas heat. It's no good. I never get used to it.
Yeah. You don't ever get to it.
No.
Especially when you want it cold. Till it does. And then
we also are babies about cold. It's in the 40s. Oh, no. Okay.
Cool, man.
End it.
Thanks for listening to Startup Anthology. Make sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, leave a comment. Startup Anthology now has merch. Check out the merch section of our website. Make sure to check out James's portfolio on his website at jameshuizar.com and follow him on Instagram at James Huizar. Follow Startup Anthology on Instagram, LinkedIn, and other social media platforms for new content and other updates. Head to our website to join the startup community and add your story to the Startup Anthology. Join me next time for another episode in which we'll talk to more people who have worked at startups and learn about their unique journeys.